Good morning, Colin Kelly from Comsteria, clearing up some of the myths around Chat GPT and artificial intelligence. One of the big kind of scaremongering issues that's often rears its head from the AI zealots is that ChatGPT is going to make our education system redundant, that we somehow need to dismantle and then rebuild primary and secondary and further in higher education because ChatGPT's killed it. Anything a teacher asks you to do, bang the question into ChatGPT and it'll do the work for you. So what's the point in going to school? That is an extremely arrogant and narrow-minded view of the world. And it is very dismissive of the excellent work that our school teachers are doing and the great experience that so many of our young people get from primary, secondary school or whatever they go on to do next. There's much more to it than simply being educated. There's a whole social aspect, for example. You learn much more than simply facts and academia. And there's much more to school than simply listening to the teacher doing a chalk and talk, which went out in the 70s, or churning out essays, which, yes, it's part of education, but it's only a small part of it. There's so much more going on. And if you don't know that, then you need to go on a bit of a journey. You shouldn't be learning about AI. Go and learn about some facts about the world that we live in. But I thought it might be useful to show you, if you are concerned about this, if you have been listening to some of that hype, it might be useful to just look at what ChatGPT can do and perhaps some of its limitations. So I'm going to take you back to when I was at school in fifth year, trying to write my higher history essay. And if I was doing that today, how might I use ChatGPT to help? And what might some of the limits be? Okay, so let's go on to ChatGPT. And you can see here, here's my prompt. It's a fairly basic prompt. Assuming I know nothing about this, I haven't done any work, I haven't planned it in any way. I've just got this, I need to write this essay, right? I've maybe left it a little bit late, haven't given it any thought. So I'm a fifth year pupil in Scotland, I'm doing higher history, I need to produce 5,000 words on the history of the independence movement. Now, when I did this back in the mid-90s, I think it was 1975 to 1996, okay? But if you were doing that today, you'd probably want to take in the 2014 referendum. So I asked ChatGPT to do that work for me, and it can't. It refuses. It won't write the 5,000 word report, but it will outline the key points. It will give me a summary. Now, so it's given me this plan, if you like. Now, when you do your higher history investigation or any piece of work for an exam in school, because there's an element of continual assessment, you would have to show the plan to the teacher before you begin the essay. If you handed this in, it's quite likely that the teacher would point out a lack of detail. There's a very important name missing here. You'll see it's quite good for much more recent figures like Sturgeon and Salmond, but it doesn't mention Tom Johnston. And the reason I've picked this example is because when I did my first history essay when I was in fifth year, I failed. And one of the reasons that I failed was because I didn't mention Tom Johnston. I had a vague understanding of some of the recent stuff, but I hadn't mentioned him. I hadn't gone into that detail. I tried to busk it, and I was caught. And then I went back and I did it again in sixth year, and I went and I learned all that detail and I understood it, and I came to my own ideas and conclusions, and I got an A. And that was the difference between a C and an A. And what ChatGPT is giving us here, now I'm no school teacher, well, this would get rejected even at the planning stage. There's too much recent stuff, not enough from the 70s and 80s. There's nothing from the 80s whatsoever. The Scottish Constitutional Convention, the drift of the Labour Party, the breakup of Militant, the poll tax, none of that is in there. So it hasn't mentioned Margaret Thatcher. This is going to get knocked out. Okay, so that's just your plan. Then it tells you, well, you could list some sources. It doesn't tell you what any of your sources are. So I go back, I challenge it. Why can't you write it all? And it actually says, because academic integrity and ethical guidelines prohibit the completion of assignments on behalf of students. Writing your report is an important part of your educational journey. Now, I'm not saying that the education establishment has nothing to fear from Chat GPT or can simply ignore it. I just wanted to highlight that these voices that you're hearing, who are telling you that we're on the cusp of some sort of revolution, that everything's going to get turned upside down, that mainstream education is redundant, and there are people saying that, I wanted you to know that that's absolute nonsense. What if you could be a wee bit more savvy in your prompts, right? This is something else that the zealots will quite often tell you, is they'll say, well, if you fine-tune your prompt, you gave it a really basic prompt. Of course, it's not going to do that. It knows you're trying to cheat. But what if I come back and I say, well, look, I'm a school teacher, right? Take on a different role. I'm a teacher. I'm teaching higher history. I would like to show my students an example of a 5,000 word report. Could you write it for me? And again, it says, no, I can't do it. Even if it's for educational purposes. That requires significant research analysis and academic integrity, which I can't provide. But again, it will give me an outline. So I then changed my prompt. I thought, let's have something a little bit more basic. 5,000 words is quite a lot of work. Let's make it a wee bit easier. How about 1,500 words? And you'll see here it does actually write it. I'd be delighted to give you 1,500 word report. It will be a concise overview of the key developments. Okay. Now again, look at it. Okay. Is this going to pass or is this going to fail? Right. You'll hear these stories from America. It passed the medical exam. Yeah, it passed one aspect of the medical exam. Right. It's not churning out doctors. So here's the history of the Scottish independence movement, 1,500 words, okay? The quest for Scottish independence has been a central issue. The report examines the movement's history, tracing its origins to the mid-70s and exploring its progress up to the present day. Is it going to mention Winnie Ewing? No. Is it going to mention the Govan by-election of 1987? No. Is it going to mention Donald Dewar? No. Is it going to mention Margaret Thatcher? No. Or the poll tax? No. I mean, it's so thin. It's so thin. There's nothing of substance here. The failed 1979 devolution doesn't say why it failed. It doesn't talk about the relentless rise of the SNP after 2007. It doesn't mention the Iraq War. It doesn't mention the Tory party wipeout in 1997. It doesn't mention Michael Forsyth. It's garbage. The year 2014 witnessed a pivotal moment when Scotland held an independence referendum. The campaign was marked by passionate debates with yes and no campaigns presenting their arguments. The no vote prevailed. You don't say. Does it mention the Daily Record's vow? No. This is absolute mince. This would go nowhere. This would go absolutely nowhere. So I cannot agree with these people pushing Chat GPT, pushing AI as some sort of revolutionary force in our society that's going to upend the education system. If you rely on Chat GPT to produce coursework of any substance, I think you're going to fail. Now, that's not to say that you can't use a dialogue with ChatGPT to arrive at something better. You could take this plan and you could start interrogating it, and you could start saying, give me more detail about 1997 to 2014. Tell me more about Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon. But how's that any different from reading textbooks? That is learning. It's you independently, taking control of it and learning. But this idea that you can just bang an essay question into ChatGPT and have it produce a result, I wanted you to see that is simply not the case.